We're here with Joel, who came top 8 at the most recent Sydney Regionals for One Piece the Trading Card Game. I'll let him introduce himself and as well as go through his deck, and I'll let him take it from here.
Okay. So I played Lore. This is cool. I think everyone in Lore runs the same search engines. So 4 Dadan, easy. 4 Nana, 4 Nami, 4 Bonnie. And make them as fancy as possible. Otherwise, so in the one drop list, again, I think it's pretty standard to run 4 Otama. This is a bit more unusual. In the Namis, 4 Choppers, always the same. 4 2K counter, which is Straw Hat. So 3 Brook, 1 Sanji. I'll explain the Sanji later. 2 Robin, 2 Filmbrook. You have to have the Filmbrook play some things out. So we've got 4 Zoro. My ratios were 3 Rush, 1 starter deck, and then 1 starter Luffy. And then 2 counter events. Guard Point, Radical Beam.
Just 2?
Just 2. I've seen people run less, but for me I ran 2. It's because I wanted to fit other things. So for the Supernova engine, so 4 Blocker Lore is always non-negotiable. 3 Restand was my choice. I think a lot of people will run 4. I've seen it run as low as 2, but I like 3. 1 Basil Hawkins, 3 Beige. So I think Lore, everyone kind of knows how the decks are built at this point. It's just what you want to do and what the meta looks like. For me, I guess I really wanted to run the Filmbrook card because Fire Fist was so prevalent in the meta. So I wanted to run it as a recovery tool against the board getting Fire Fisted. Similarly, to do that, you have to make sure you've got things which can play out. The best things that can play out is realistically the Zoro card or a couple of extra Robins. So really just thinking about the Zoro matchup. The other thing I was really thinking about was how prevalent Whitebeard is in the meta. So I wanted to have a few cards to respect that matchup. So I added in 3 of these starter deck Namis. They're just really incredible against Whitebeards. But I didn't want to cut my 2K counters down by too much. So these mostly took the place of Makino. Sometimes people will run 4 Makino as 1-drops just to make sure that you have enough 1-drop searches. So I kept 1 Makino as another 2K counter, so in total I would still have 9 2K counters there. Similar reason was to put the starter deck Zoro in. The starter deck Zoro is, I think, a lot better against Whitebeard than, well, not maybe a lot better, but it is helpful against Whitebeard. And it's also helpful against Fire Fist, because if you can manage to use the Filmbrook to pop it out, or if you can use even just a Blocker Lore to pop it out as well, 1 Don on top, if you've got 2 6k bodies, they're a lot harder to get rid of the Fire Fist than a 5 and a 6 or a 5 and a 4. So I wanted to see him sometimes, but Rush Zoro is so good against everything else, so I just kept mostly Rush Zoro. I think the other little things are just going 1 Blocker Luffy and 1 Basil. The Basil again was just purely, for me, he's a really good card in the Ditto if you run into other lores, and he's really good against Whitebeard. If you see this in your opening hand against Whitebeard, you feel like you're probably just going to win. Luffy I picked as the other card to be here is just because number one is he's got a really good effect. Everyone knows Unblockable is amazing. Otherwise, the other thing is because he's kind of like Zoro. The one reason why Lore deck's always been good is because you have this search engine which has a lot of things which have good synergy, and Luffy is double searchable by both the Nami and the Bonnie because he's got the Supernova tag. The other thing he does is a lot of the time, like when you play Lore, you want to play out your Bonnie and then you want to shambles Bonnie back to your hand, which is great as long as you've got a Blocker Lore. But if you don't, then it's kind of nicer to, like, if rather than hitting a Hawkins or another restand lore, if you hit this Luffy, you can shambles her out and still get a nice 5 cost 6k body on the board. So those are mostly those choices. This Sanji was a little bit of a weirdo choice. This was actually just luck. So I was playing like one of my friends the night before the regionals, and I was getting my ass beat by Katakuri, which is really weird for lore. And I decided to change my deck quite a lot the night before, and I needed another 2k counter, and he happened to have a Sanji, so I put Sanji in. It worked out. It actually ends up being quite good against Nami, and against actually it's not bad against as a first turn play going second against Zoro. Even though it's a 3k and it can get popped by Marco, it means that if they play out Buggy, you actually have something which can swing into it because it's not Slash, and almost everything in this deck is Slash. So yeah, so it's not too bad. I kind of like him in Experiment.
Nice, good justification. You obviously did well, so it worked out for you. What was your easiest matchup of the day?
I think everyone who I played actually was really good. That's why I think that's why I had good tiebreakers. But in terms of just having a good matchup, if you're lore, my first 2 matchups were Nami, and I drew the Sanji opening hand. So the 2 things you want against when you're playing Nami and your lore, you want to play a bunch of searches. But if you happen to see this, you play a bunch of searches because they just want to starve you out of your resources, and then you just play this as well. You play blockers. So I got lucky and I saw this opening hand against both the Namis I played round 1 and 2 as a 1-of in the deck. So that kind of made it a lot more simple against both of them. And then my third round was against Doflamingo, and the Doffy player again, he was very good, but he also missed his Perona turn 1. So again, if you're playing lore into Doffy, you usually have the advantage anyway, and then if they don't hit Perona, it's bad time. So I think those opening 3 rounds were very lucky for me, and so the players were skilled, I was lucky.
What was your hardest matchup?
I lost both of my lore dittos. So one of them was the guy who finished undefeated day 1 and he won the whole tournament, and the other one finished in the top 8 as well. I think he finished second after day 1. So they were both running lore. They were both running quite different lore decks than me, but I think they were both just also better players, better at the ditto. So that was a big learning experience for me, was to play both of them. That was almost impossible for me to win.
Insane tiebreakers, having first and second from day 1, and then the eventual champion, who I heard didn't even drop a match the entire time.
No,
so
undefeated. Yeah.
Insane. Would you make any changes with OP04 around the corner?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know for sure. I mean, I think it's before I commit to anything really. Like, you just have to experiment a lot. But I'm really curious about basically building the deck more in keeping with the list of the guys who beat me, because they both come from Singapore. So they've played in the set 4 meta, and I know that the way that they built their deck was to do well into that meta as well. So I'm gonna experiment. I mean, I still really like a lot of the things that exist here, but I want to try and see what it looks like against Rebecca, because Rebecca seems to be the big new problem.
All right, thanks for the deck profile, and we'll probably see you here again next time when you top again. Thank you.
If ever, yeah.
Yes, do all your shout outs.
So shout out to you, Joseph JoJo's Hobby House. I've heard from people who aren't even me that it is the most competitive One Piece community around the Brisbane area. So I think it's really good practice to come here. It's a nice environment. Otherwise, basically the people who I playtest with, so my fiance, her brother, and my friend Sean, they're all really helpful with making sure that I actually learned how to play the game. So, yeah. Sorry if I forgot anyone.
Excellent, thank you.